Hello dear everyone. Tu Diep is very sad when Jame is not by his side. But even sadder when Jame died. A public press conference of Jame with his father. Lost the image of Jame's father. With a personality like Jame's father. He did not want his child to continue living and fight against him. So how did the story go? What happened to Jame? Let's find out today. James returned not as the triumphant heir his father had crafted, but as a man carrying a storm in his chest. On the surface, his flight home seemed like any other business trip cut short. Yet inside him something had already broken, something that could no longer be repaired with power. Money, or the familiar cold shine of the family empire. He had discovered the truth, the crashing price of oranges, the mysterious lawsuit strangling the farm, the threatening photograph of Diep and their little daughter Nee, and worst of all, the audio recording in which a shadowy figure spoke with chilling calm about handling them. Every thread led back to one man, his father. The same man who claimed everything he did was for the family. His return was not to the farm, not to Diep, not to the daughter who had grown tall enough to read her first book. No, James walked straight into the lion's den, into the cold marble mansion where his father ruled like a king. The estate was silent except for the clicking of his shoes, each step a verdict. Each breath a reminder that betrayal could feel heavier than murder. His father awaited him with the same air of absolute certainty he had always worn. As though the world bent to his decisions. But when James spoke, his voice trembled not with fear, but with resolve. He told his father the truth he had carried across the ocean: he would marry Diep. Not out of rebellion, not out of nostalgia, but out of love, the one thing his father had tried so tirelessly to suffocate. The old man stared at him with a mixture of fury and disbelief. The kind reserved for a son who had dared to step outside the blueprint of legacy. Within hours, the father arranged a press conference, a spectacle as grand as it was cruel. Photographers gathered, microphones lined up like weapons, and the lights glared with the cold intensity of judgment. There, in front of the world, the father publicly disowned his own son. He painted Diep as an opportunist, a stain on their reputation, and declared James unfit to inherit the empire. Cameras flashed as if feeding on humiliation, and James stood still, letting the storm crash over him. But he did not bow. Not this time. Because now he understood. Love was not a weakness. It was the last remaining piece of himself that his father could not purchase or manipulate. The confrontation that followed behind closed doors was the true breaking point. The father offered him a choice dressed in poison: return to the empire, reclaim power, and banish Diep and Nee into a life of financial comfort but emotional exile, or walk away and lose everything. Wealth, name, inheritance, all stripped away in a heartbeat. For a moment, silence thickened between them like smoke. Then James reached for his wrist, unbuckled his watch, his status, his inheritance, his birthright, and placed it on the desk. A quiet rebellion, yet louder than any scream. "I'm done," he said, voice steady. "I choose them." He walked out without looking back. When he reached the farm, the sun was just beginning to fall. The fields tinted gold and quiet. Diep stood at the doorway, eyes tired from years of fighting battles she never asked for, yet still soft when they found him. Nee peeked from behind her mother's legs, holding a book with smudged little fingerprints. The moment James stepped forward, the weight he had carried cracked, and he held them both as though anchoring himself to life again. There were no dramatic speeches, no promises of easy days ahead, only a quiet understanding that love was fragile, and safety was no longer something they could take for granted. James vowed to protect them, not with the empire's power, but with the fierce devotion of a man who had finally chosen his true family. The wounds left by the press conference would take time to heal, and the world would gossip about the son who rejected his father and paid the price for it. But James no longer cared. He had lost an empire, but he had reclaimed his soul.